Welcome everyone, another episode of Back and Forth. Kevin and I are ready to go. We're going to have some fun. We'll start off today talking about the crypto crash, what happened in the cryptocurrency markets. You can see all the other topics on the bottom of the screen there, including a lightning round. So lots of fun today, Kevin.
Yes, definitely. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hopefully we get some questions that we can answer and see if we get a good scenario on that, or whether or not there's going to be a lot of debate as to what we're going to deal with going forward. Otherwise, please remember, you can check out this video as well as other videos that we have. Go to our website at beckerorr.com, go to our YouTube channel, or like us on Facebook. We are more than happy to help out with anything we can, and please feel free to contact us that way. Otherwise, I think let's get this started. Clint, crypto cash, or crash should I say, not cash, crypto crash. What's going on here?
Yeah, we'll pull up a quick chart. The top panel there is Bitcoin. It went from about 64,000, give or take, down to about 30,000, so a 53% haircut. The bottom panel is Ethereum. It went from about 4,300 down to about 1,800, which is about a 58% haircut. And then they both bounced back a little bit from those dips. But 50 to 60% of a drop there, Kevin. That's in a matter of weeks. And this is just the top two. If we went across all the different cryptocurrencies, you'd see more or less the same thing. The whole market just took a big haircut in the last couple of weeks there. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, basically, this looks like a chart. Well, this looks like the cliffhanger game from The Price is Right. I'm going to go all the way up and then just going to fall off the edge of the cliff the way things are going. But you're right. I mean, there's been a variety of different things. You've had things along the lines of Elon Musk coming out saying that he doesn't want to take Bitcoin anymore for his Tesla because it uses too much energy to do the mining and things along those lines. China and Japan have both come out and they've stated that they are not into the cryptocurrency sort of scenario at the moment. So every time you get a whole bunch of this news that comes out over their social media or online or normal news sources, you start to get that, oh my gosh, I got to get out because nobody else wants to touch it scenario. So those are just a couple of the reasons. There is more involved in this though, isn't there, Clint?
Well, there's always lots involved with these. You can't pinpoint and say this is the one reason why crypto went down and Bitcoin went down. It's normally a kind of a cascading effect. There are lots of factors. You're right, China did crack down on miners, and there were quite a few Bitcoin miners in China, so that certainly had an impact. And also one thing to mention is the amount of leverage. There are a lot of folks had quite a bit of leverage in the market. Some of these crypto exchanges will allow people to go like 50 to 1 or 100 to 1, so it doesn't take a whole lot of move before you're in trouble, and you got to liquidate the position. So that has a cascading effect. When it starts to drop, that leverage can kind of get worked out of the system. So a few factors there coming into it, but we're seeing it not just in the cryptocurrencies themselves, but all the tangents, everything related to that. One we talked about in our last video when we talked about NFTs, NBA Top Shot, non-fungible token. They had those moments, people were selling them, buying them. The prices went pretty high. You can see the big spike there on the chart. And then they came back down to earth. So everything related to the crypto space kind of went through a similar motion where it had this rally up and then this big crash down. And it doesn't mean the NFTs and Top Shot's going to disappear, but just that initial euphoria seems to have faded a little bit. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me, you've got that sort of fad aspect, right? All of a sudden it came out and everybody saw what the NBA Top Shot was. Oh, I've got to have one. I can't spend my cryptocurrency on a lot of other things. Let me buy as many of these as I can because they're going to be very valuable down the road, or they're going to be few and far between and they're very scarce. Let me get it. And then all of a sudden you realize that how many plays there is, what you can do, how fast you can get in. So that big euphoria starts to lead off and go down the road. But you're right. I think the non-fungible token side is here. I mean, Major League Baseball just announced they're coming out today. I mean, the NHL is getting into it. You're going to get a variety of different things. I'm sure entertainment will get in there, whether it's through Hollywood or whatever else can be. So Those are definitely areas that we're going to have to take a look at. But yeah, it's not gone, but yeah, it definitely isn't going to get that same spike again for a while. That being said, we decided to find out what's going on with the Jets playoffs. What is going on with the Jets playoff system there, Clint?
Yeah, first I got a little article, a headline there by the Canadian press. This came after the Jets beat the Oilers 4 straight, I might add, a complete sweep. And taking the underdog mentality in stride, following the series sweep. And you had a nice quote there by Jets memorabilia ready to go. Quote there by Dylan DeMilo. It says, "We thought we could ruin some people's playoff pools. That makes me smile. The underdog taking the victory." And then yesterday, Kevin, the Habs doing the very same thing to the Leafs, who are supposed to just run through the playoffs here. The number one seeded team, they get knocked off. We now got Canadians and Jets in round 2. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a surprise seeing the Canadians come back down 3-1 and go. I mean, all I know is the guys at Sportsnet got to be really upset with this. They were looking forward to Matthews, McDavid, and they don't have any of that to talk about now. You're going to have to start talking about Scheifele, Hellebuck, Carey Price. It was definitely a great win for them, and it sets up a different scenario for the Jets going forward. I mean, they were basically in regard to Toronto, they could play the same sort of system. You had to shut down Matthews and Marner. You'd shut down Tavares and Nylander on the top two lines, and the depth isn't there. The Canadians are a bit of a different beast. They come at you in waves. They're a speedy team. They like to throw everything at the net, and they do have solid goaltending just like we do. So it's going to be interesting to see. I still think that the Jets have that chance to go right to the next round after this because they did win the season series against it. But again, I mean, there's going to be some tweaks. They've been off a week. They're just over a week now. It's definitely something to see. So, I mean, yeah, I'm rooting as I can, but this is a different beast than what they expected.
It is. And I think the rest will probably play a factor because the Canadians leave 7 great series, a grinding series. They just, just finished last night. They're going to 1 day of rest. They'll be right back at it. And the Jets team ideally is going to be well rested. Any of those lingering injuries should hopefully be taken care of. So you think we'll be strong out of the gate here, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in game 1, but certainly excited. Definitely excited going into the second round of the playoffs. It's been a couple of years since the Jets been past that first round.
Yeah, definitely. It's been that sort of scenario. I always like to have predictions, but I don't dare make one because no matter what I say, it's definitely going to be wrong. I'm not like Dominic Moore on NBC Sports who manages to pick these things without a problem. I'm going to leave that alone. That being said, I think it's time that we get into a lightning round here. And what better way than to figure out what questions should we go with, either financial, non-financial, or anything else. Clint, why don't you start us off? I'm all set and ready. I got my thinking toque on. I'm good to go.
I got all my questions here. A reminder again, the speed round. We're going to throw a whole bunch of topics, financial, non-financial, try to see Kevin's off-the-cuff answers. We're starting in the non-financial world here, Kevin. All the buzz last little while. The Friends reunion. Did you watch it?
No. That's basically it. I don't need to answer. My wife and my daughter are huge Friends fans. They've seen it at least once. I think my daughter's seen it more than that. I know of it. I have seen it beforehand and everything else, but I have not. I'm assuming that this is just going to be huge for these guys going forward. Everybody's been waiting to see the Rachel, the Rosses, the Chandlers, the Joeys of the world and everything else, but I haven't seen it at all. So maybe down the road, but not right now.
All righty. Question number 2. Canadian S&P TSX for record levels. We're just on the doorstep of 20,000. Likely we'll get there soon. Once we hit 20,000, what's the next direction? Do we go up to 21,000 or we drop into 19? Where do we go after that?
You know what? As much as I'd like to say 21, I think we're due for a pullback. I think 19 is visible before we get to 21. My rationale is, we were down at almost 11 and change back in March of last year. So we've almost doubled the market in that time frame. Sooner or later, this has got to slow down. It's a hard call to make because we've still got the economies opening, the vaccine's coming around. But that's sort of the scenario. I'm thinking 19 before 21. We'll go from there.
All righty. Third question here. Canadian GDP numbers for the first quarter just released this morning. Very strong numbers. A lot of folks expecting a big economic push in 2021. Canada's economy, Kevin, does it grow at 6% or below 6% in 2021?
Oh, that's a big tough one. I'm going to go that it grows at the 6%. And I think even though I think the market may have a bit of a correction before it goes up, I think that we're going to see a good 2021. Energy prices are moving up. Oil's at a 2-year high right now. You're seeing the commodities are being there because everything's opening. Supply chains have been restricted, so you're going to need to use some of that going forward. So, being in the area we are, I think that goes well.
All righty. Shifting gears here, the Olympics in Japan. Supposed to happen last year. Obviously, the pandemic threw that out. Now Japan's in a state of emergency. Got a third wave of COVID. Do the Olympics even take place?
I think they do. I really think they do. I know that if it was Canada, we'd have the same sort of scenario. We don't want it in our country, but if it's elsewhere, I really want to watch it. So, that's sort of the way it works. I think the IOC and the rest of the world has that sort of scenario. I think there's money involved in this, regardless of the fans being in there or not. So I do see the Olympics going through, especially with the fact that you've still got another month. And so hopefully the vaccine can get to that point and then we're not going to have to deal with it.
All righty, last question for in the speed round here. A Quiet Place Part 2 hit the movie theaters. Phenomenal opening weekend for them. And that's in the middle of a pandemic. In fact, the second installment there did better than the first one in 2018, even though there's less theaters here. I know you're a movie buff. Is this kind of like the bounce back from movie theaters? Do you think theaters are going to take this momentum and run with it?
I think they will. I think as we get out, people need to go places. And the theater is definitely a place they can go. There's those that are used to it running inside, but I'm a movie guy scenario. And if the border opens tomorrow, I'm down there. I'll go to Minneapolis. I'll see something in the theater just because I want to do that. So I think this is going to open. Plus you got, July is coming out with Black Widow. All the big movies are starting to come in that August, September timeframe. So I believe this is the start of the push going forward. Excuse me.
All righty, let's shift gears here. Your turn.
My turn. Let me ask you some questions. Now, on a financial basis, I know that you've been following the U.S. quite a bit. the infrastructure package that's going on down there. There are huge gaps. Does this get solved?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, they are miles apart. Biden and the administration started at like 2.2 trillion. They reduced it to 1.7. The Senate Republicans came back and said, how about 900 billion? There's still a huge gap in terms of price tag. There's also a gap in terms of what exactly is infrastructure. I'm using air quotes because a lot of the Biden package had green initiatives, and a lot of the Republican counteroffer had none of that. It was more of the nuts and bolts interstates and more of the typical what we'd think of when we say the word infrastructure. I'm not sure it gets done on a bipartisan basis. I think it'd be very tough for that to get done on a bipartisan basis. So I'm saying not bipartisan. If it gets done, the Democrats are going to have to force it through. That's the only way I think it gets done.
All right, one down. Now to the next one. We've been talking about sports a bit. Talk hockey because it's in there. The CFL, are they going to play this year?
I hope they do. I think they'll find out a way. Maybe it'll be a no-fan scenario like we've seen in some of the other sports leagues, but I think the CFL gets off the ground this year. That's my view. I think it's going to happen.
Perfect. Well, we talked earlier about the movies and me wanting to cross. Now that we're still in this sort of state with with the COVID in Canada, when does the U.S.-Canada border get opened? Is it done by July 1st, or are we waiting until sort of the Labor Day long weekend before we see anything?
Oh, it's not July 1st. I think it's because of the Canadian situation, not the U.S. situation. It's probably going to be later. Labor Day, maybe. I'll say maybe September sometime.
Perfect. Now, you are a Tragically Hip fan. They have come out with a new album, minus the fact that their lead singer is no longer there. This is the start of something. I've seen Prince on the same scenario. Do the Hip and other artists, are there more albums that are going to be released after, you get a person that passes away in the group?
I certainly hope so. I'm a big Hip fan. The Saskadelphia's, the new album, came out a few weeks back, and it's apparently recordings that they did in the lead up to the Road Apples album, which was early 90s. So 90s rock is right up my alley. I loved it. And I'm confident if these things sell, the executives of the record companies are going to keep finding those lost tapes, quote unquote, with more recordings that they can keep releasing. So I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm expecting more albums from Prince, Tragically Hip, and all the other bands that are in that category.
Perfect. And finally, sticking with that sort of theme on people and Hollywood interviews and sports, let's combine it all together. Naomi Osaka decided to decline and leave the French Open. She left because she didn't want to do interviews. Now, should this be mandatory for athletes to be able to do interviews, or should they have the right to say, no, I don't want to talk to you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I was of the view that it was mandatory as kind of part of their contract. They're getting paid by the leagues. The leagues want media attention, so the athletes are kind of forced through the contract to do the interviews. That was my view. If it was optional, I'm not sure why the athletes would want to do it. And why would they want to subject? Like, why would Connor McDavid, after losing, getting swept by the Jets, why would he want to do an interview unless he was forced to it? So I was of the view it's kind of part of the contract. They get these huge salaries, and that's kind of part of the deal. They have to deal with some of the media exposure. So I thought that was kind of part and parcel of the job. You get the big paycheck to play the sport, you have to deal with some of the media.
That's exactly it. That's perfect. I mean, if anybody out there, if you have views that are different than ours, please feel free to share your comments with us. You can get in touch with us at Chat with Clinton and Kevin, and it can be on any of the financial topics we've talked about or any of the questions that we mentioned through our speed round. By all means, we are happy to talk to you about anything we possibly can. Otherwise, I think that takes care of another back and forth for us. Clint, parting words?
I think you covered it well. That's it for today. We'll be back again next week. Everyone stay safe. Take care.